Okay, so the doctor says they're in ventilation shafts, but if you look at the ship, there's so many holes in it that there's no way that they'd need a ventilation shaft that big in this. The goblins really need a lot of help not stinking the place out. Or maybe they generate toxic gases that become too much for them. Like how if we stay in the one room, oxygen runs out, maybe. I don't know. They've clearly operated in places like in rooms like clubs and not struggled to be there. So why do they have these things? The doctor says they're ventilation shafts, and to be honest, I'm inclined not to believe him. The doctor makes a lot of claims that are just clearly terrible bits of judgment. Like, he's not got the massive brain everyone thinks he does. So ventilation shafts, probably not. What are they? I don't know. Maybe they get hassled by other goblins, This has a very pirate ship vibe. Maybe other goblin pirates, try to get at them. And maybe this is a little secret ambush. If your enemies take it over, you can sort of ambush them from the ventilation shafts, so to speak. I don't know. You know what? The king of the goblins probably is the one who needs the ventilation shaft. Maybe they're farting through it all the time. Whatever. Point being, he's probably super stinky. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe once you've eaten baby, you have really bad breath, So, and bad gas. Where do they put their poo is really the question that we have to ask. Does the poo travel through the ventilation shafts? Do they just have a big stash of poo that they're what? Just venting through the ventilation shaft? These two don't seem to be complaining about the smell, so I think that the smell is yet to come, and the smell will come when the baby is eaten. I want it to be a more interesting explanation, but just why on earth would there be ventilation shafts here? Okay, let's forget about them being ventilation shafts. I think they are clearly designed to be little tunnels, and it's placed above the thingy, the rack that goes into the Goblin King's mouth. Maybe this is the way you walk in order to sacrifice yourself to the Goblin King. You walk down here, you end up on the conveyor belt, and the Goblin King gobbles you up. Maybe they have a strict code in the same way that the Centaureans have Santa Ho. You've behaved adequately or whatever. And that's a terrible thing. Maybe these goblins accept when they have to die, or maybe they want to die for the Goblin King. Maybe this vent is as big as the queues. The current goblins, goblins recreate so much. Maybe 20 a day get gobbled up by the Goblin King. And this is why they're all so invested in their job, which is to feed the Goblin King with not themselves. I'm just saying, these goblins look like they're in oppressed conditions. Look how badly made this drum is. It's just a big floppy thing of fabric. It must be so hard to get good sound out of that. This person's just, working this. The fucking working class goblin oppressed by, the one who lords it over them, the monarch, the Goblin King. You know, that like opening of the eyes is just like, I'm trying my hardest, I'm like breaking my body to do this work just so that he won't eat me. They are terrified for their life, that's why they're doing this. You know, this implies that all the goblins are, like, if all the goblins are working so hard not to get eaten, like, I imagine these are, like, kind of like really young goblins. This Goblin King doesn't just eat human babies, they eat goblin babies, and these are the goblin babies. And, you know, they have to do that because if they let them grow, then they'll become their own Goblin Kings and queens and, non-binary monarchs. You know, so yeah, everyone's just struggling to stay alive for the brief time that they do. I don't know how they procreate, like, because presumably the kids aren't doing anything. That would be weird, and I don't want to consider that. So, like, the Goblin King, I mean, this is like solving how the fucking Lupari recreate, you know? Like, do they just pop into existence every time there's a coincidence? That's magical. I'm gonna say yes. Like, this is the only life the goblins know. You know, they're so young, just they're taught that their job is to, you know, basically feed themselves to the Goblin King. You know, maybe this is the only musical number this little guy will ever get to do in his life. Or maybe they'll live long enough. Because they're feeding the baby to the Goblin King. How do they recreate? Oh yeah, I said. Oh. Okay, I've realized something. Goblins, how do they procreate? The Goblin King eats them and shits them out. And as he gives birth to them anew, they become goblins. They were babies, once human babies. Then they were taken by the Goblin King, corrupted, to become his new goblin followers. So the question is, like, I guess that doesn't explain the events then. Unless, yeah, like, maybe there's limited space on the ship and the vents are for when there is a culling. You gotta make yourself invaluable. Is playing this instrument invaluable enough? Sing for your life. Okay, so there's a lot of questions about how can they be children if this one is saying that the Goblin King can eat me, and he makes them swoon. Swoon implies sexuality, which does not connect with, you know, being babies, essentially. But if you look at them, like, is that white hair I see? Actually, no, there's probably something behind them. But look, they've got an eye patch. An eye patch is indicative of a long life, kind of, you know? Like, they've lost an eye because they've lived so long. So, like, you know, maybe this goblin's, like, quite old, at least by human standards. And, you know, to become a Goblin King, to become a Goblin Monarch, you you know, you don't just take 20 years to become that. You take thousands of years to become that. The Goblin King is the source of the power on the ship. This ship is as powerful as the Goblin King is. Hence why when the Goblin King dies, everything dies with it. Like, there'll be Goblin Kings that are, you know, have lived longer and are therefore bigger and more powerful. I mean, you've seen how massive this Goblin King is. You know, this is an old one. You know, maybe one day they'll be able to become their own Goblin King. But they'll probably only get a tiny little goblin rowing boat, sky rowing boat, you know, initially, because there'll be a tiny little goblin monarch, but it may be, you know, the longer they live, the more they'll be able to build up their powers. I think they need the vent in order to either, you know, as the walkway to death where you fall down onto this conveyor belt and then go into the Goblin King's mouth. Like, I think this is too tall for them to climb up. They really struggle with climbing? No, but they climbed up the ladder. Nevertheless, I think they find this difficult to climb up, or, because that doesn't seem very likely given the height of this, I think that it's just the right height to break their legs when they fall down from it so that they can't escape the Goblin King. These are oppressed goblins, woven into their existence. Who will free them? Will the doctor free them? Does death count as freeing them? Would they be grateful? Would they welcome it? I don't know, the way that they regard the doctor when he comes down from the vents, it's almost like they're like, whoa, this person's incredible, maybe they can free us from our chains, you know? And that's why when the doctor tells the band to play, they obey the doctor because they think that maybe they have a chance to be released from this cruel existence. Yeah, so that's why when he says, "Rocket Janice," they kick up immediately because they look to him as their hero. Of course they're going to go back for Ruby because they are trying to provoke him into killing them by stealing his friend. I don't know. Maybe that's not what they're doing. Maybe they're trying. Maybe the Goblin King is forcing this strategy.